Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be my final wrap-up video of the series where I've featured the Acora SRC-2, the Magico S7, and the Spatial Audio X3. I created a playlist on my channel with each of the videos prior to this. You can get caught up if you want to do that before watching this. And then I have a separate video I'm releasing today with music clips. As I mentioned before, I put those usually in a separate video because YouTube copyright regulations and stuff changes. They'll sometimes block a video I released a year ago. So keeping my commentary in a separate video allows that to stay on YouTube. And some people don't even like listening to YouTube clips because there are some limitations to what you can glean. And even though I tried to pick 3 songs from different variety, that's genres, that's still not enough. And so one benefit being a member, if you join the membership section, I have released some behind the scenes other things that I do to test these speakers and will be part of my evaluation that I share today, my listening commentary. And stuff I just didn't even film, period. But one of the things I'll tell you about it is I listen to speakers with test tones because inevitably I have a 200 track reference playlist, but I don't have time to go to a dealership or shows to listen to 200 tracks. But inevitably I've learned over the years, especially using DSP, that all those frequencies matter at some point in certain songs. Sometimes people say, oh, that speaker had no bass. Or had a lot of bass, but how much bass information was really in that song? Did it cover all the frequencies? Same thing with a speaker being bright or not. Did you listen to a song that doesn't even have material in those frequency ranges or not? If you didn't, then it's not going to reveal those either strengths or weaknesses. So what I did, and it even kind of took some of the people off guard why I was doing this, I play test tones and listen with my ears only, not even measurement equipment, to see how balanced it is among each frequency range. And I'm going to share some of that in the membership section, actual footage of me doing that and seeing, so you can hear for yourself which frequencies maybe peak up or down or whatnot. And as I play these speakers, and to me, that gives me a more general impression of how it's going to fare across all of my 200 tracks. Because some tracks I play, it may not excite that 2000 hertz bump, but other tracks it will. So I would, caution you to and advise you to do that yourself. Just learn how to evaluate frequency sweeps with your own ears, realizing you have to calibrate your ears for being a little bit more sensitive at higher levels. And you can use an SPL meter at first to kind of get a gauge of it, but ultimately it's what your ears hear anyway that you're going to like. So that's a very kind of important tip that I've learned over the years, and maybe something you want to try as well. But inevitably, in any case, the 3 tracks that I put in that other video should give you somewhat of a flavor. And so let me give you my commentary based on those tracks, the frequency sweeps, and also other tracks that I heard that I'm not sharing on the public channel. Starting with the Acora. Wow, that was a speaker that the word wow came up a lot as I saw it at 3MA for the first time recently. And I've seen a lot of speakers come through 3MA, and there's always people there that I know and frequent visitors. And I always kind of can gauge people's impressions when new speakers come in or things on trade-in consignment. And gotta say, the Acora is probably one of the speakers that has wowed people the most of any speaker that's come in there that I can remember in terms of universally impressed. Now, to be fair, I think some of that delta is related to expectations because it's not a huge speaker with the gravitas of a Rockport, Magico, MBL, YG. So people probably weren't expecting it. They don't know the brand. But as I've been featuring it on my channel for all this year at various show reports and people become a little more aware of it, it's kind of cool now for these people that haven't been at the shows to hear it in Houston that I know and also be impressed with what they're hearing. And the ultimate litmus test, better than probably any commentary I can give you guys, is that the first day it was at 3MA on a demo, I think 3MA was trying to demo it to decide whether to carry that brand. They sold it the first day. that it was there. Now, I think there was some issue with wife acceptance factor of the looks and stuff. So that's one of the polarizing things that are going to be variables in all these speakers that I talk about. In general, you know, this isn't a versus comparison per se of all these speakers. It's more a case of featuring each one and me relaying to you where I think these would fit for different taste profiles, number one, different rooms. I think all of these three get my thumbs up for being reference quality and suitable for certain tastes and certain budgets and certain rooms. And that's what I hope to highlight today with this video. And so starting with the Acora, like I said, the anecdotal evidence is among third parties is through the roof based on shows and people I've talked to there, as well as my own impressions, as well as what just happened at 3MA. My friend Joel Ray, want to give a shout out to him. Unfortunately, he just had a heart attack, has to go through open heart surgery next week. So hopefully everything goes well there. But when he was out there last week listening to the Acoras, he was pretty much saying this is going to be his next speaker. So again, can't give any better anecdotal than when people want to put their money where their ears are. But in terms of my ears, again, I think what I've said in the past, it's a very coherent speaker with really great drivers that surprisingly can fill any room, as I've showed at the various shows. But to me, it's that coherency and the quality of drivers and the punch and just full range nature, almost down to 20 hertz, that is very impressive in a small form factor. And I will say there are speakers that are much more expensive than the others that I've had bottom out when we played loud. It's pretty impressive, the quality of those drivers and how, more importantly, they integrate. Because let me just talk about this real quick. I talked about it in my original review of the GR Research and Extremes, but I don't get really into all that audiophile jargon when describing gear and even with speakers. But I really look for some key criteria. Is it full range, neutral, dynamic, detailed? If it captures those three aspects, then I know with DSP and my room and my taste, I can tailor most things to my taste and get the kind of performance that I expect at a minimum. Now, there are two other qualities that are more niche to me that I don't not recommend the speaker or poo-poo it for others if it doesn't have these. But these are two other aspects that I look for my taste, which will judge, you know, where I pivot to for my preferences. And the two things are full floor to ceiling presentation, the dispersion aspect, line sources, line arrays, open baffle, floor to ceiling is something that I've just come to enjoy and prefer over the years, just because point source box speakers and traditional size speakers for my ears typically just fill the bottom 2/3 of the room at best. And it just gives me the impression that I am listening to speakers. There's a lot of people where they don't care. When they're in the listening chair, it's plenty big enough of a sound stage and fine. For them, it's just something that is my preference, more the line source arrays or point source arrays that go floor to ceiling with the dispersion and presentation. That's one of my little niche things that I'm being honest about here. And reason why I have the GR Research and Extremes and I own Maggies and Wisdoms, where I put my money because that's my preference. So I can buy pretty much any of these speakers if I wanted to, but this is the preference for me. But caveat aside, even though these don't have that particular aspect, I am honest enough to say these still could be recommended to a large amount of people because, again, my preferences are niche. The other preference of mine that's a little niche is coherency. And what that refers to is, in my opinion, two distinct areas. How the drivers integrate between each other. And I talked about this briefly in the Acora video where we talked about, yes, drivers you can get them to sum to flat. But what I really look at and try to hear is, are these drivers mated such that when they do overlap in certain frequencies, do they kind of sound the same and not call attention to themselves or end up playing different tonally? And what that also usually leads to is the speakers being just a bunch of drivers. You hear a bunch of drivers, and then you get the impression that you're just listening to speakers instead of a performance. Because in a live performance, you don't have speakers and different drivers reproducing the same frequencies. You have one instrument, one voice producing that. And so that to me kills a lot of the realism. So I look for coherency. And then point source box speakers in general are very difficult to convince me it's a presentation reality versus speakers, because pistonic drivers typically shout the music at you, especially if you're on axis and really close. So that's where I've looked for speakers that can get out of that level of performance and deliver that higher level of coherency that I like. And kudos to all of these speakers on those aspects, especially the Acora and Magico. Those are normally point source box speakers that it's much more difficult to convince me. And also the BBC monitors like the Spenders and Harbeth do a very good job of that. And I am going to share with you at the end some other speakers to put in the same ballpark. All of these are top level ones that I think you should evaluate in your budget range, but I will give you some other ones as well that I think are best of the best like these to evaluate. So talking about the Acora, great job on the coherency, and they don't do floor to ceiling like I like, but pretty much everything else I would happily own those speakers. I probably made them with a sub because we did try it with a sub, a rel sub, and on certain dynamic EDM rap music at certain volume levels, I felt the sub did add something and could help that speaker compete with virtually any speaker for that dynamic impact. Those drivers are really high quality, and like I said, I've heard much more expensive speakers bottom out playing loud, and those really don't. They can really push the envelope to performance that you don't expect. So kudos to Acora. The Magico S7s, I'm going to be a little bit hesitant to make final judgment on the Magico S7s just because the two rooms that they've been in, I don't think, even Magico would agree, are the ideal room sizes for that particular model. But even despite that, it's still an impressive speaker, especially in the bass area. Very punchy, dynamic, detailed, pretty much down to 30 hertz easy. You could probably add a sub in certain rooms if you really play a lot of material at 20 hertz, but it can really move the air with those 3 10-inch drivers, and definitely has a nice top end as well. I think they're going to move those speakers into the upstairs area at 3MA, so I really want to hear it in a bigger room and make even a better judgment and share more thoughts with you once I hear that. Plus, 3MA is becoming a dealer of Magico, and they're getting in, my friend ordered the M6, as well as I think 3MA is going to have in-house the A5 or one of the A series. So I will have more when I can compare those. I know the M series has really impressed me a little bit more than S series at various shows. So I can't wait to see and hear this M6 that my friend ordered. And then the A series, I don't have as much exposure to either, but everything I've heard from Magico at shows has always been high-end, exudes high-end construction and quality, and there's a high bar for their performance in every room. And a lot of manufacturers that they choose Magico to demo their gear with. So that's as good, just like I was talking about with Acora, great anecdotal evidence of something that resonates with a lot of people. So yeah, thumbs up on the Magico S7 in general. The Spatial X3 is a lower price point, $10,000, but it's their top-of-the-line model. And so it was exciting for me to get a chance to hear this in more detail, set it up. And really what I enjoyed the most about that speaker is the fact that it has that powered bass module where you could adjust the gain. And I even have some clips, and again, the membership section, I'll probably share that stuff, where I get up in the middle of the song and adjust it, and it improves the performance. And so that's something that a macro takeaway here is that, you know, people poo-poo gain controls and DSP and all that, but this is clear as day. As if you were just fixed on whatever they voiced the speaker at their listening facility and gave it to you, and you had to put it in your room, you're going to hear it a lot different than what they hear it in most cases, unless you think that the room has no bearing at all on the sound. Same thing for the Magico. You know, they have that very well-treated listening room, and probably apply what they hear in that listening room to what they think they're delivering in their speakers. So you probably are going to want a room treated much like Magico does, maybe not to that level, but at least know that what they're using to voice their speakers and give the thumbs up to is that room. You probably want your room to be somewhat similar in level of treatment to hear at least what they are hearing. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy it without treatments, but I'm just saying I think you get the highest potential with things like Magico when you can match it to what they're using in their own room. Same thing with this. Well, with the Spatial, they're doing it a different way. They're saying, yes, open baffle bass, you're basically, your room is your cabinet. So having that gain control is a very powerful add-on feature because, like I said, if I had that fixed at one point, I don't think I would have liked that speaker that much at all in the rooms that I had heard it in. But when I was able to get up and make those adjustments, even mid-song, man, made all the difference in the world, even subtle differences. The only negative I would say is that I think that knob on the gain control could use a little more finesse to even dial it in more, or even a gauge or something that could give me a little more finesse on that. But yeah, that's a big positive and just a thumbs up for those kind of level of controls on speakers. It makes a night and day difference, and thumbs up on that. Now, with the tweeter, is another thumbs up on Spatial Audio X3 is that they're using a very high-end AMT tweeter, which you can hear the benefit of that pretty easily and kind of sense that it has the performance characteristics that you hear from the best diamond, beryllium, plasmas, even ribbon speakers. It's in that same ballpark of resolution and air and delicacy. The only negative that I find with that, or at least difference that I kind of am used to something different, is that the Spatial has that kind of a horn loading of that AMT tweeter, which I felt added a little bit of more coloration to the sound than what I'm used to. So with the wave-guided planers at the GR Research and Extremes, I felt that it's a little more neutral, but there is some trade-off maybe in some resolution and delicacy with the AMT being maybe a little superior to the planar. So this is where your taste profiles of what you're going to focus on may push you one way or the other. And again, the Spatials don't do the floor-to-ceiling array that the GR Research does, so that's another one where you're going to have to decide. I think if I were going to judge the Spatials, what taste profiles it would fit, I think if you're a traditional box speaker guy and you're used to that very dynamic, punchy bass that can fill a room and play a lot of dynamic music, transitioning to an open baffle like the Spatial is going to be less drastic than, let's put on the totally other end of the side of open baffles, Maggies, which aren't known for their visceral impact, acoustic wave, bass that's, visceral. That would be the polar other end of the spectrum. This Spatial is going to give you that. Now, when you start getting to these other open baffle bass, though, and then you graduate to the GR Research and the Linkwits, I think you're getting a little more textured, pitch definition, and somewhat of what people think is the positives of open baffle bass. I still prefer, at the very lowest register, sealed box bass, which was something that Magico did pretty much with their entire bass module is sealed, their entire cabinet sealed. I think that the best of both worlds is kind of like what I'm doing with the GR Research, and then the Linkwits is open baffle bass. I would give the Linkwits an advantage in the bass over the Spatials, just in terms of a little better pitch definition, but in terms of the impact and price tag of the Spatials, what you're getting for the money, it will fill any room and get your blood pumping, toes tapping on virtually any music, and would be the less drastic polar change going from a point source box speaker. In the end, coherency, that's another thing that is going to fit the scale different. I think they go for ultimate efficiency with their cabinet and their crossover design and driver complement. I think with the GR Research and Extremes and the Linkwits, I think there's a little better coherency handoff between each of the drivers, where the mid-range to me is a little more pure and enjoyable. But we're splitting hairs here. It's just what I'm sharing with you in terms of where your profile is going to be. If you're a tweeter and dynamic bass guy, the Spatial Audio at that price point is going to be tough to beat. if you want to graduate to different price levels and enjoy a little more coherency and some pitch definition in the bass, I think you will find it in the Linkwitz and the Geo Research. Maggie's are going to be one of those ones where if you want the floor to ceiling open baffle bass presentation that I like, but you want to you're going to sacrifice some of that acoustic wave and visceral impact, you know, that's what you got to decide, versus the Spatial, where you're not going to get the floor to ceiling, but you're going to get that visceral wave impact and very good tweeter, you know. So these are things that you're going to want to pay attention to and maybe decide which one is more to your taste and liking. Again, you're not going to hear everything in these music clips to follow, but hopefully you'll kind of glean a little bit of that. I'll also tell you about some other speakers that I think, like these, are like best of the best in their price points. The techniques that I featured previously, that was at 3MA in these exact same rooms. And when I ran my test tones on that one, 20 hertz, you could hear it clear as day. And then it had that really nice coaxial driver system, which allows for off-axis frequency response to be really good. And another anecdotal thing on the techniques, one of my friends that used to go through speakers a lot, he bought the techniques and hasn't changed for a while now. So that's a big endorsement anecdotally. And another one that I would put in that best of the best is, of course, the Linkwitz in open baffle, and that price point, certainly you can't beat that with even, you know, much more money. So again, you do sacrifice a little bit of that floor to ceiling that I get with the Geo Research and Extremes, but there's a lot of other benefits with the Linkwitz. That's a must audition in that price point, and much higher as well. So hopefully among all of these various options and some of the taste profiles I've outlined, it gives you a little better help to decide which one may be for you. Again, the room, your taste, budgets are all going to be different. So it's not really a case of which one's the best of the best. What's best for you is not going to be always what's best for everybody else. So hopefully you enjoyed. Go check out the clips in the next video, and I'll see you back here soon with a lot more.